March 23, 1960 began like countless other nights in Las Vegas, a city that glittered with neon lights and endless promise. The Strip pulsed with energy. Limousines pulled up to hotel entrances. Men in tailored suits and women in elegant evening gowns drifted through casino floors filled with the ringing sounds of slot machines and the murmurs of gamblers chasing luck. At the center of it all stood the Sands Hotel and Casino, one of the most glamorous venues in the country, where entertainers performed for crowds who believed they were witnessing the very height of American show business. But behind the bright lights and polished floors, Las Vegas was a complicated place. The city thrived on entertainment and spectacle, yet it still carried the weight of a deeply segregated America. Black performers could headline shows and draw huge audiences, but they were often denied the most basic privileges once the curtain fell. They could sing on the stage, but they couldn't sleep in the hotel rooms upstairs. They could perform for wealthy guests, but they weren't allowed to eat in the same restaurants afterward. Many had to enter buildings through service corridors and kitchens rather than the front doors meant for customers. It was a contradiction that everyone in the entertainment world knew about, even if few spoke about it publicly. That night at the Sands was one of the most anticipated performances of the season. The Rat Pack had been dominating Las Vegas entertainment, a loose group of friends whose combination of talent, humor, and effortless cool made every show feel like an event. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop had created a style of entertainment that blurred the line between rehearsal and improvisation. Their shows were unpredictable. They joked with each other, teased the audience, and turned every performance into a kind of exclusive party that ticket holders felt lucky to attend. The Sands showroom was packed. Frank Sinatra stood under the lights, delivering one of his signature songs with effortless control, his voice wrapping around the melody like velvet. Dean Martin leaned against the piano, half singing, half joking with the audience in his relaxed, easygoing way. Joey Bishop kept the laughter rolling with quick observations and clever one-liners. And then there was Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy was electric on stage. He could dance with explosive energy, sing with deep emotion, and shift seamlessly into comedy or impressions that left audiences roaring with laughter. Many people in the entertainment industry believed he was the most talented member of the Rat Pack. He could do almost anything, and he did it with a kind of joyful intensity that made people lean forward in their seats. When the show ended, the applause seemed to go on forever. But the night wasn't over. After the performance, a small group of invited guests gathered in the VIP lounge backstage. It was a quiet, private room designed for performers and close friends to relax after a show. The space was decorated with soft lighting, comfortable couches, and a bar stocked with expensive whiskey and champagne. The walls carried framed photographs of entertainers who had performed there over the years, creating the feeling of a private club where only the most famous people belonged. Frank Sinatra stood near the center of the room holding court the way he often did, telling stories from the road that had everyone laughing. Dean Martin leaned against the bar with a drink in his hand, listening with a half smile that suggested he'd heard many of those stories before, but still enjoyed them. Sammy Davis Jr. was nearby, still wearing his tuxedo from the show. He had the restless energy of someone who loved performing so much that the excitement stayed with him long after the audience had gone home. He moved from conversation to conversation, joking with musicians and greeting friends who had come backstage to congratulate him. Across the room, sitting comfortably on a couch, Elvis Presley watched the scene unfold. Elvis had finished a performance of his own earlier that evening at the New Frontier Hotel. By 1960, he was already one of the most famous entertainers in the world. His music had reshaped popular culture, and his film career was beginning to take off as well. But despite his growing fame in Hollywood, Elvis still loved the energy of live performance. He had come to the Sands that night simply to watch the Rat Pack show and spend some time with friends afterward. He sat quietly, holding a bottle of Coca-Cola and talking with Dean Martin about movies and music. For a while, everything in the room felt relaxed and easy. Then the door opened. A man walked in with the kind of confidence that often comes from money and influence. His name was Harold Beckman. Beckman was in his mid-50s, a heavyset man with slicked-back hair and a thick gold watch on his wrist. He owned stakes in several major casinos in Las Vegas and was known as someone whose approval could open doors for performers looking to work in the city. People stepped aside as he entered. Power has a way of creating space around itself. Beckman greeted Frank Sinatra loudly, slapping him on the back with exaggerated familiarity. He nodded towards Dean Martin and Joey Bishop, acting as if he were an equal among them, simply because his money helped keep the lights on in the casinos where they performed. Then his eyes settled on Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy was in the middle of telling a story when Beckman approached. "Hey, Sammy," said Beckman, raising his drink. "Great show tonight." Sammy smiled politely. "Thank you, Mr. Beckman." Beckman took a slow sip from his glass. "You people really know how to entertain." The phrasing made a few heads turn. Sammy's smile remained in place, but there was a slight pause before he responded. "Glad you enjoyed it." For a moment, it seemed like the conversation might move on, but Beckman leaned closer, and then he said something that froze the entire room. "Still," he said casually, "you're just another—" The slur that followed hung in the air like poison. The room went silent. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Someone set down a glass too quickly, and it clinked loudly against the bar. Sammy Davis Jr. stood completely still. His smile vanished. For a man who had faced racism throughout his life, you might imagine that he had built a shield against moments like this. But the truth is, insults of that kind never lose their power. They cut deeply every single time. Sammy opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. Across the room, Frank Sinatra's expression darkened. Dean Martin slowly put his drink down. Everyone understood instantly that something serious had just happened. Before anyone else could react, Elvis Presley stood up. Elvis moved across the room with a calm, steady walk. He wasn't rushing, but there was purpose in every step. He placed himself between Sammy and Harold Beckman. The room seemed to hold its breath. "Mr. Beckman," Elvis said quietly. His southern accent was stronger than usual, the way it sometimes became when he was angry. "I'm going to need you to repeat what you just said." Beckman laughed awkwardly. "Oh, come on, Elvis. I was just joking around." Elvis didn't smile. "I didn't hear a joke." Beckman shifted his weight. "You know how it is, just having fun." Elvis stepped a little closer. "No," he said softly, "I don't." The room was absolutely silent now. Even Frank Sinatra had stopped moving. "What you just said isn't something you joke about." Beckman looked around as if expecting someone else to intervene. No one did, and in that moment he realized something he hadn't expected. His money wasn't protecting him here. Elvis turned slightly towards Sammy. Then he looked back at Beckman. "Sammy Davis Jr., Elvis said, stronger now, is one of the greatest entertainers in the world." No one in the room disagreed. "He's got more talent in one finger than most people have in their whole body." Elvis paused. "And he's also my friend." The words landed with weight. Beckman tried to laugh again. "You're taking this too seriously." "No," Elvis replied. "I'm taking it exactly as it deserves." For the first time, Beckman's confidence faltered. "Look," he said, "I didn't mean anything by it." Elvis shakes his head slowly. "You meant exactly what you said." Then he pointed toward the door. "You should leave." Beckman stared at him. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes," Elvis said, "and right now, you're a man who just insulted someone I respect." Frank Sinatra stepped forward. "He's right," Frank said. "You should go." Dean Martin joined them. Time to call it a night. One by one, people in the room moved closer to Elvis and the Rat Pack. A quiet wall of solidarity formed. Beckman looked around and realized he was standing alone. He muttered something under his breath and turned toward the door. Before he left,
Elvis spoke one more time. "Remember something, Mr. Beckman." Beckman stopped. "Money can buy a lot of things," Elvis said, "but it can't buy respect." The door closed behind him, and the room exhaled. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Elvis turned to Sammy. "You okay?" Sammy's eyes were wet, but he was smiling. "Yeah," he said quietly. Then he pulled Elvis into a hug. The room watched in respectful silence, and in that moment, something powerful happened. Not a speech, not a protest, just a simple act of standing up for a friend. Sometimes that's enough.